Our next conversation about significant figures has to do with how significant figures come into play when you're rounding a calculation. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do is decide how many significant figures are needed, and I'll talk to you about that shortly. You're going to round to that many digits counting from the left, so you're going to count out however many significant figures you're going to need for your calculation, and then you're going to use the standard rounding rule. Looking at the next digit, if it's less than 5, drop it. If it's greater than 5, increase that number by 1. There are two different rules when it comes to rounding for significant figures, and it's important that you know the difference. The first rule has to do with addition and subtraction. When you're adding and subtracting values, the answer that you're rounding should have the same number of decimal places as the least number of decimal places in the problem. Here's an example. We have the number 6.8 and we're adding it to the number 11.934. Now, whenever you guys are going to be doing a calculation and rounding to the correct number of sig figs, I would always recommend writing out the complete answer first, 18.734. The next thing you're going to do is decide how to round it properly. Now let's look at the rule. It said we should round our answer to the number of decimal places as the least number of decimal places in the problem. Well, the number 6.8 has 1 decimal place, and the number 11.934 has 3. So since the rule says we should round to the least number of decimal places, we should round our answer to 1 decimal place. Looking at my raw answer, 18.734, means I should round to that 7th place, and my final answer should be written as 18.7. Some practice. 2 decimal places and 1, so our calculator would say 10.24, and we're going to want to round to the least number of decimal places, which is 1, so our answer should be 10.2. Again, we're subtracting 1 decimal place and 2, so after we get our answer, we're going to want to round to 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, so we are going to want to round to 2 decimal places, 1 decimal place, 3 decimal places, so we're going to round to 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, so we're going to want to round to 1 decimal place, 3 decimal places, 3 decimal places, so we are going to want to round to 3 decimal places. Now, what happens in an instance like this when we don't have that 3rd decimal place? We simply add on a 0. Multiplication and division has a different set of rules for rounding with sig figs. So remember, in addition and subtraction, we rounded to the least number of decimal places. For multiplication and division, you're going to round your answer to the least number of significant figures. So the example down below, we have the number 6.38, which has 3 significant figures. The number 2.0, which has 2 significant figures. We're going to round our answer to 2 sig figs. We get our answer, 12.76, and we round it to 2 significant figures, 13. So again, some practice with your calculator. Again, like before, I would always recommend you writing down the raw number that you get on your calculator screen and then rounding using proper sig figs. Again, we're multiplying, so we round not to decimal places, but to sig figs. 3 sig figs in this value, 2 sig figs in this value. If my calculator reads 22.68, I can only have 2 sig figs in that answer, so I must round it to 23. 4 sig figs, 3 sig figs, so I'm going to take that really long calculator answer and round it to 3 sig figs. 1 sig fig, 4 sig figs. So yes, I'm going to take this number and round it to only 1 significant figure. Now be careful, the zeros out front don't count. So when I round to that first significant figure. 2 sig figs and 2 sig figs. This is always tricky for students to round. If I'm rounding this to 2 sig figs, I count over from the left, 1, 2. The 3 gets rounded up to a 4, and I do need a placeholder of a 0 to show how large that number is. 5 significant figures and 3 significant figures. So I'm going to take that calculator answer and again round it to 3 significant figures. Again, this is a little trickier like the last one. Leave the 7 there, but I do need that placeholder. 4 significant figures and 3 significant figures. Again, I'm going to need 3 significant figures in my answer, just like that.